Morning, guys. Kieran here, back with another Stable Tour podcast. Plenty going on with Chepstow starting this week. This is my final podcast for the Stable Tour season, and it comes from the Lucinda Russell and Michael Scudamore stable, who have plenty of winners last season, and they have got a stack full of decent novice hurdlers and novice chasers to go to war with next season. We'll start off with the novice hurdlers. I have 7 on my list of novice hurdlers that they've got plenty lined up for the season. The first one being Stride On, a bumper winner at Newcastle, who's well related, and they believe that whatever he does over hurdles will be a bonus. He's a big, strong, strapping 5-year-old who they believe will be a chaser in the making, but they also believe that he can win plenty of races going hurdling this season, probably starting at 2 miles and then maybe stepping up as the season progresses. But then once he goes novice chasing next season, he will be even better. That's Stride On. The next one to note is a horse, 5-year-old gelding called Out of the Woods, a bumper winner Ayr last season, goes novice hurdling, likely to start over the intermediate trip at 2.5 miles. The softer the conditions, the better, so we're probably likely to see him more suited to December, January type races. But they really think highly of him as well. 2.5 miles. He won the bumper at Ayr very nicely. Strongly run race, galloped all the way through the line. Obviously hoping that he progresses into a decent type over hurdles. We then have Humble Jumble, 5-year-old gelding, bumper winner at Kelso. He actually ran yesterday in his on his hurdles debut, went off 7-2, second favourite up at Kelso, but slightly disappointed, finished down the field. Not sure if there was anything wrong with him. We haven't had any reports come back yet, but they would have been very disappointed there. They had high hopes that he would do decent in novice hurdles this season. Won his bumper very nicely up at Kelso, so sent back there for hurdles debut, which looked an ideal assignment. Like I said, sent off 7-2, second favourite, but disappointed, very, very poor down the field. I think he's like 13th of 15 in the end. So they won't be happy with that, but we'll see what comes of that. But he could still be a prospect, potentially stepping up in trip in time. That's Humble Jumble. The next one is Channery Point, a point-to-point winner, a bumper winner at Musselburgh. Then he was third at Kelso. She was third at Kelso. She will then potentially go mare's novice hurdle route. They'll probably stick her in against their own sex over the 2-mile trip and just see how she gets on. If she becomes one that potentially is outrunning what they believe they've got, she might take on the geldings later on in the season, but she's likely to stick to the mare's novice hurdle campaign for the time being. The next novice hurdler to follow, the 5-year-old gelding of Conman Jack, who again, like Humble Jumble, actually ran and made his debut yesterday at Kelso. He just about won and defied his odds on. He was 4-7 to start the race, and he just about got home beating a stablemate. Previously had won a point-to-point and won well, like I said, won well on hurdles debut yesterday over 3 miles. Probably idling coming over the last, to be honest. I think he was a bit, only just got up, but it looked like he had a bit in hand, to be honest. 3 miles definitely his trip. He looked, being by a point-to-point winner is probably going to be whatever he does over hurdles is a bonus. Next season when he goes novice chasing, he could potentially be even better, but he's definitely one that they are keeping in high ranks for the novice hurdle campaign this season, and just keep on size over those staying trips of 3 miles. That's Conman Jack. The next one is another point-to-point recruit, this time finishing runner-up, the 5-year-old gelding called I'm Perfectly Perfect, who, like I said, point-to-point runner-up, was then won his bumper at Hexham. Likely to start over 2 miles and then see how he progresses from there. But they're very excited about this horse. They believe he could be slightly go under the radar because he didn't win his point to point. He wasn't bought for much at the sales. he could potentially be one that could just progress without people potentially realising. You could get a decent price on the day when he makes his hurdles debut. Like I said, he only won a bumper up at Hexham. He's not won nothing flashy. He didn't win his point to point. So you might get a bit of a price about him first time up, and then go from there. Hopefully he progresses into a decent novice hurdler for the season. And then the final one of the 7, the 5-year-old gelding, is Sledar. I believe I pronounced it Sledar. I think I pronounced that correctly. Placed in a point to point, and then in his only bumper as well, he was placed as well at Perth. So a bit like Imperfectly Perfect, could potentially go under the radar when making hurdles debut. But they're very excited about it. Again, another one that they're very excited about. He will start potentially over the intermediate trip of 2.5 miles, and then potentially step up to the 3-mile trip. But because he's not flashy, because he hasn't won his bumper or point to point, you could see that he could go under the radar and could be one that you get a bit of price back to start with, and then they hope that he will progress into potentially listed or graded company. But there is handicaps as well that he could possibly drop into also. So yeah, that's the novice hurdlers. Then novice chasers, I've got 5 novice chasers to give you. The first one being Jet to Vegas, 6-year-old gelding, point-to-point winner. Also won twice over hurdles and placed twice over hurdles. Currently rated 137 over the smaller obstacles. 2 mile 4 looks the ideal trip for him, and they are sending him novice chasing and are very excited for when he does go novice chasing, and they think he can take top rank in the novice division over 2.5 miles. Maybe he'll step up to 3 miles, and they could fill that potential Ultima gap that obviously everybody looks for. The Lucinda, the Russell Ultima horse now that she's won it so many times the last few years. But yeah, potentially he could be one that could go down that line. Another one that could go down that line is King of Answers, 6-year-old gelding, placed in his point to point, then won his hurdles debut at Newcastle, and he looks a stayer in the making. Only rated 128. They believe there's plenty of improvement in that mark once he goes over fences, and he's another exciting prospect in the going into staying novice chases. Potentially around like your more galloping tracks, your Newcastles, your Newbury, Doncaster, etc. Cheltenham could be on the radar, but they're likely probably to keep him up north to start with and then work their way down. Haydock's another one. Like, it's a bit more of a speed trap, but he could be aimed at something like that as well. The next one we're going to talk about is Big John Wayne, a 7-year-old gelding, point to point, placed on his point to point, and then he was placed again. No, he won his point to point, and then was placed on 2 of his 3 hurdle starts to date. He's only rated 118, and they believe there's plenty of work in that mark. They believe he could get up to as high as the mid 130s. They really believe that he's left a lot behind for himself over hurdles, and there is plenty more to come in this horse once going novice chasing. They're really excited about him, especially when he starts over 2 mile 4, close to the 3 miles. The lot further he goes, they believe the better this horse is going to be. That's Big John Wayne. 2 more to go. Kingston James is the next one. 2 wins last season over hurdles at Hexham and Musselburgh, and then was also placed twice as well. He's rated 120, and again, a bit like Big John Wayne, they believe again there's more potential to come in his mark, and he could be, like I said, mid 130s, close to 140s over fences, which means there is plenty of improvement to come once he jumps the bigger obstacles. And then the last novice chaser to follow from the stable is probably their strongest novice chaser they've got, and probably more well known to everybody. I'm sure he's been put up on a few podcasts around the place, and that's a Derry Hassan Paddy. 2 wins last season at Uttoxeter and Windsor, both on deep ground, and then was a good third at the Albert Barla at Cheltenham on quicker ground, which probably wouldn't have been more ideal for him, but he ran a decent race nonetheless to finish third. Goes novice chasing this season for the team. Likely to start off with 2 mile 4, and then work his way up to 3 miles as the season progresses. They believe he could be the one for the spring novice chasers at the back end of the season, the 3 mile division. So your RSA, your middle May put Aintree. But then again, if he doesn't build into that, they could drop into that Ultima, which obviously Lucinda Russell has an excellent record in. But we should see how he goes. They are very excited about him when he takes the fence. He's a big, strapping horse, and will probably do a lot better over fences than he did over hurdles, which, if he does, he should be very, very exciting and one to keep on side. 4 horses from the handicap plot section that we could potentially have here. The first one is a 7-year-old Inex Allen, rated 130. He won a nice handicap in April over 2 mile 4. They believe off a mark of 130 he's potentially well handicapped, and wherever he goes, if he gets in a race where he gets a soft lead, he could be very hard to catch and could potentially run up a bit of a sequence, they feel, if he is able to dictate his races. That's Inex Allen. The next one is Jupiter de Mott's a 6-year-old who came to the stable at the start of last season, won his stable debut up at Newcastle before finishing second at Ayr, and then was third at Perth over 3 miles, rated 123. They believe there's plenty more in this horse in regards to stay and hurdle races. So you'll look in the mark, and you're likely to see him, like I said, in stay and hurdle races over 3 miles, and workable mark of 123. And then the next 2 are more household names to the stable who ran decent races last year. The first one being Whistle Stop Tour, a 7-year-old gelding who plenty had touted as the ultimate horse for last year for the yard. Rated 133, was sadly pulled up in the Ultima, then didn't run again after that. They're saying that he's then already ran this season, finished last at Perth. Potentially that was a season opener, just getting the run into him. They have said that the likely target for this horse is Haydock on Betfair Chase Day. One of the handicaps on that day is his potential target for the early part of the season. And off 133, they think he is very well handicapped in the stay-in division at that level. So that's Whistle Stop Tour. And then the last one is the ultimate winner from last year, is Myers Town, now rated 142 after going at £15 for that sensational win off the front in the Ultima. This 8-year-old is likely to be aimed at the Hennessy to start the season and then progress from there. Obviously, if he wins the Hennessy well, they may try and take in a graded race before then. All the targets and all the roads lead to the Grand National at the end of the season. And then I've got 4 newcomers for the stable. You've got Jet of Stars, a 4-year-old gelding who won his point to point and was bought for 230,000 at the sales last year, and he's likely to start off in the bumpers. You got Double Blessed, a 4-year-old gelding who was bought for 65,000 at the sales, and again bumpers likely to be started with. A 5-year-old called Malam, I think I pronounced that right, won his point to point at his 3rd attempt, but being 5, likely to start straight over hurdles, so one maybe to keep on side for a novice hurdle down the line. And then a 4-year-old gelding called March on Oxo, who was runner-up in his point-to-point, bought for a lowly fee, will probably start in bumpers, but will probably won't see the best one until he goes novice hurdling and potentially intermediate to stay in trips. So that is all the horses covered for the stable tour for Lucinda Russell and Michael Scudamore's yard. I hope you all enjoyed the video, guys. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All those horses will be written down on my Telegram in the stable tour comments, so you will not miss a bit. You don't have to have sat there with a bit of paper and written it all down as I've gone through it. I will write it all out on there with all my reasoning, all the explanations of where the horses are going, etc. But I hope you all enjoyed the video, guys. Please like and subscribe. If you could retweet it as well, that'd be great. Try to push as much following as possible for these videos. And roll on Chepstow at the end of the week. Good luck, guys, and happy punting all.